Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing you are trapped in a room. You can shout, you can sing, you can whisper your deepest secrets, or you can tell a joke. Your vocal cords seemingly work perfectly. Your biological hardware is entirely intact. There is nothing wrong. But there is a catch. No one outside that room can understand a single word you're saying. And worse, there is no one else inside the room with you. This isn't a sci-fi nightmare. It is real, documented, psychological and historical reality. It is the reality of the last speaker. Right now, as we sit here, there are roughly 7,100 spoken languages across our planet. But according to the data from UNESCO and major linguistic databases like Ethnologue, over 40% of them, more than 3,000 distinct tongues, are currently classified as endangered. Linguistics estimate that every 40 days a language goes completely extinct. A quiet erasure. And when a language dies, it doesn't just evaporate, it narrows down. From a bustling community to a single village to a single family until it resides entirely inside the skull of one single human being. Today, we are stepping into that lonely room. We're looking at what happens to the human mind, history, and our biological hardware when a culture fades into an absolute total silence. And we will be asking, who is left holding the final word? To understand how a language dies, we have to look at the people who carried the weight of the final sentence. Let's talk about Marie Smith Jones. Marie was born in Cordova, Alaska in 1918. She was the honorary chief of Eyak Nation. And by the late 1990s, after her last older sibling passed away, she realized something terrifying. She was the absolute last living person who could speak fluent Eyak. When an interviewer from the New Yorker asked her how it felt to be the sole keeper of her entire culture's native tongue, Marie didn't give a sterile academic answer. She looked at the reporter and said, "How would you feel if your baby died? If someone asked you, what was it like to see it lying in the cradle?" Think about the sheer weight of that statement. Marie had 9 children. But due to the intense social engineering and colonial stigma of the 20th century, none of them were taught Eyak. English had slowly, systematically chalked it up. Let's look at this from the perspective of our biological hardware. Your brain is a massive filling cabinet of neural pathways. When you speak your native language, millions of synapses fire instantly, linking memory, muscle movement in your throat, and raw emotion. For Marie, her brain held the only neural blueprints on Earth for Eyak grammar rules, idioms, jokes, and lullabies. When she slept, she dreamed in a language that nobody awake could comprehend. Before her death in 2008, she worked frantically with a linguistic named Michael Cross to compile a dictionary and grammar record. She wanted a record to survive. But when Marie Smith Jones closed her eyes for the last time on January 21st, 2008, the living, breathing version of Eyak died with her. The biological connection was severed. Now, a skeptic might say, so what? A language died, they speak English now. It's more efficient for the global economy. But that completely misses the deep philosophical catastrophe of language extinction. There is a famous concept in cognitive science known as linguistic relativity or Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. While academics debate its strongest form, the core truth is undeniable. The language you speak deeply influences how you perceive and structure reality. Take indigenous languages of Pacific Northwest or the Amazon. Many of these tongues don't use abstract geometric coordinates like left or right. Their grammar forces them to instead orient themselves entirely by geographic features like upstream, downstream, or absolute cardinal directions. A child growing up speaking that language has their biological hardware wired to have an innate constant spatial awareness that a city-dwelling English speaker can barely fathom. Consider the language Ongota, spoken in a tiny community in southwest Ethiopia. As of recent studies, it has fewer than 10 elderly speakers. Ongota contains ultra-specific words for micro-behaviors of local wildlife and distinct features of native plants that do not translate into broader languages like Amharic or English. When those last few elders pass away, thousands of years of localized botanical, ecological, and philosophical wisdom vanish. It's like a massive library burning down, but we didn't even get a chance to read the titles of the books. History is full of these quiet, haunting endpoints. In 1974, an old fisherman named Ned Maderell died on the Isle of Man. He was the last native speaker of Manx, a Gaelic language. In his final years, researchers rushed to his bedside with bulky analog tape recorders, desperate to catch the sound of a language that had evolved over millennia before it became a ghost. Go further back to 1777, a woman named Dolly Pentreath of Cornwall passed away. She was widely recorded as the last fluent monolingual speaker of Cornish. Local legend says that her very last words were an angry, fiery curse shouted in Cornish at someone who couldn't understand a single syllable of what she was saying. Think about the poetry and the absolute tragedy of that moment. Your final human expression, your parting thought on this earth, locked forever in a god that died with the breath that carried it. This is what linguists call the cruel curse of the last speaker. Language is fundamentally social. It requires a bridge between two minds. But the last speaker is a bridge that leads to a cliff. They possess an incredibly complex tool designed solely for connection. Yet, they are condemned to a lifetime of linguistic isolation. So, why do we look into these ruins? Why do we care about what's gone? Because it reminds us that our reality is fragile. Right now, Ethnologue notes that 1,431 languages have fewer than 1,000 speakers left. They are one natural disaster, one economic shift, or one generation away from entering that final lonely room. But there is a glimmer of hope. Sometimes a dead language doesn't stay gone. Cornish, the very language Dolly Pentreath cursed in, was actually revived by passionate communities in the 20th and 21st centuries. Today, hundreds of people speak it as a first language again. The Eyak language of Mary Smith Jones is seeing small digital revival efforts while recordings and dictionaries left behind. We are all just temporary caretakers of the words we use. The phrases you use with your friends, the slang of our generations, the stories told by our ancestors, they only exist because we keep choosing to pass them on. The next time you speak, remember, language isn't just a date. It's a living echo of every human who came before you. And as long as someone is left listening, what's gone isn't really lost.